I still remember when I first played Turok Dinosaur Hunter. That does seem to be a bit of a running theme around here, doesn't it? I was riding high on the Nintendo 64 hype, and I wasn't alone. A friend of mine also had an N64 around this time, and we'd spend our weekends together playing whatever we could. He'd come over almost every other weekend, and we'd rent whatever N64 games were available at the local rental shop and play the heck out of them. One such game was, you guessed it, Turok. This game was hyped like few others on the console. Early screenshots showed a very realistic, for the time, look at Dino Mayhem. And with the N64 and, well, 3D gaming in general being all the rage, Turok received a lot of attention for its smooth and detailed graphics. And rightfully so. Quake had only recently made a splash in the PC space, and initial impressions indicated that Turok might make a similar splash on the Nintendo 64. Early days with the console were rough, to say the least. I vividly remember having just Killer Instinct Gold because the only games that were in stock that Christmas were that and Mortal Kombat Trilogy, and both were crazy expensive. Things stayed this way for some time. I'd regularly rent Wave Race 64, Star Wars, but never Mario 64 because it was seemingly always rented out. But as time went on, the situation improved and more games became available. I vividly remember this one weekend in particular. My friend came over and we managed to somehow snag a copy of Turok from the rental store. We then proceeded to stock up on cans of Mountain Dew and Pepsi, which were just 50 cents at the local vending machine, along with a stockpile of candy and chips. We had a long night of dinosaur hunting ahead of us. Back then, my impressions of Turok were super positive. I remember being blown away by the realism on display and the gory animations that occasionally accompanied the kill shot. I also remember gobs and gobs of fog and blurry graphics, but it didn't matter. This was the freaking Nintendo 64, and after the Super Nintendo, Nintendo could do no wrong. Boy, was that ever a bitter pill to swallow. Weirdly enough, I never ended up buying Turok for my collection. Instead, I opted for Turok 2 since it had sharper graphics and even gorier animations. Never mind the terrible frame rate. Years would pass and my opinion would remain the same. Turok 2 was the Turok game to beat. And for a long time, it seemed that most people agreed. But at some point, public opinion started to change. Social media became a thing and suddenly everyone was sharing their thoughts, for better or worse. And the popular narrative quickly became clear. The first Turok was apparently the best of them all. Revisionist nonsense, I thought. I was there. I remember how much better Turok 2 was. How could people say Turok 1 was the better game? Well, I wasn't the best game critic back then, but I'm not so close-minded to think that they may be onto something. Surely they had their reasons for believing such nonsense. It turned out, according to those weirdos, that Turok 1 had a more open design, a design that somewhat laid the groundwork for what would become Metroid Prime. And I remember thinking, hey, I like Metroid Prime. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe Turok 1 is the better game. I would continue to hear this narrative passed around, along with examples further supporting Turok 1 as the better game. And before too long, I started to believe it myself. I would think back to that night when my friend and I filled up on sugar and caffeine and played the game until the sun came up. Maybe Turok 1 is the better game. Decades would pass and a little-known developer known as Night Dive would end up remastering the Turok games for modern platforms. Naturally, I snagged it on the cheap with the intention of reliving the glory that is Turok Dinosaur Hunter. And since I am working on rebooting my channel, what better time to revisit this landmark game? So I opened Steam and installed the game, booted it up, and got a bit of a chuckle seeing the exact same splash screens from the original release. This iguana bit has always felt right. Gulp. Also, fun fact, Iguana Entertainment was founded by the same guy who would go on to form Retro Studios, the developers behind Metroid Prime. The alleged similarities between that game and Turok may not be the coincidence I thought it was. Anyway, I started the game and wow, this thing flies. Everything is so much faster than I remember, which is likely because this release actually is faster than the N64 version. For those of you who don't know, Turok ran at a sub 20 FPS on the old 64, something that was actually extremely common on the console. So to see it running at 60 FPS was just wild. The original game used fog to hide graphics that hadn't loaded into view yet. This way the player wouldn't see them popping in. The fog and blur are nearly gone now, with the unfortunate side effect being that some blemishes are a bit more obvious as a result. This is likely why the developers retained some of the fog for this release. But that's not all. I didn't know it back in 1997, but this game would also end up with a PC port, which apparently sported different music, and that music is available here as well. Of course, I'm going on a nostalgia trip with this video, so it's N64 music all the way for me. Running around the levels feels great. It's fast and the guns feel mostly satisfying to use. I seem to remember the bow and arrow being more satisfying, but it's all good. There are a good number of weapons here. Strewn about the stages are various pickups. You got the expected health and ammo pickups, but there are also these triangles. I honestly never knew what these were for. I just collect them because that's what you do when you see floating objects in a video game. Turns out they act as coins. Collect 100 of them and get an extra life. Just like in something like Super Mario Bros. An interesting choice for a shooter, but okay. Another thing I noticed was the enemy variety, specifically the lack of dinosaurs, which I found a bit surprising. I remember the press giving Turok 2 a lot of crap back in the day due to it relying so heavily on non-dino enemies, yet it seems Turok 1 didn't have a whole lot of them either. In fact, a majority of your foes are human, or humanoid, while the rest of them are some kind of lizard monster things. This isn't something that bothered me all that much when playing for this video, but it is worth mentioning. I was having a good time shooting stuff regardless. After what felt like forever, I finally reached level 2. I'm not kidding, I probably played the first level for like an hour. I kind of assumed the levels were just really big. I kept finding enemies to shoot, so I figured I was going the right way. Sometime later, I found myself in level 3. Fatigue was definitely setting in at this point. I felt like I was playing Quake, not something that resembled a more primitive Metroid Prime. I was getting a bit frustrated, wandering aimlessly, trying to find the path forward. I started paying more attention to the text prompts at this point because I felt like I was spinning my tires a bit. And this is when it finally hit me. I need to find keys in each level. That's how you unlock subsequent levels and progress through the game. Very old school. Okay, well now that I know, this shouldn't be that bad, right? Oh, how wrong I was. I began searching high and low for these fabled keys, but rarely found anything of use. Meanwhile, I finally realized that enemies just respawn endlessly. I guess that explains why I never ran out of things to shoot. Not only that, but I started to remember one annoyingly frustrating thing about the game that I had sort of forgotten over the years: the first-person platforming. Now, platforming in the first Turok on the N64 was a chore, to say the least. But here, it's not actually all that bad, just a bit tedious. But now that I was aware that I would need to utilize it regularly in order to find keys and progress, well, it became a lot more tedious real quick. Making matters worse was the fact that enemies were doing a lot more damage as I continued to progress. I was not having a great time by this point in my journey. Eventually, I had experienced my first boss fight in the game, and oof, what a disaster. This fight is about as ridiculous as it gets. These pickup trucks, armed with guns of course, spawn in and try to gun you down. While blasting away, they're also hellbent on running you over. All the while you need to contend with this cowboy looking fella, and it just isn't fun at all. Somehow, after a few attempts, I got through it though. I pressed on for a while, but around level 5, it hit me. I just wasn't having fun anymore. As in, zero fun. The game started off pretty great. It looked nice for its vintage, the gunplay was tight and responsive, and the levels were large. But the cracks became more and more apparent as time went on. These levels, sure they were big, but they were also bland and lifeless. There simply isn't anything interesting going on here. Worse still, they're basically mazes that wrap in on themselves. Now look, I understand that first-person shooters were a whole different breed back in the mid to late 90s, but that doesn't mean it holds up. The funny thing is, I do enjoy the boomer shooter genre quite a lot. Heck, I recently had a great time with Warhammer Bolt Gun, but this was grating. I pressed on for a bit longer before I eventually found myself in this room full of pillars. After claiming the item in the adjoining room, I had to run back and hop along the top of these in order to reach the exit. With some time and patience, I made my way out, only to be taken out shortly thereafter. And of course, my last save was before that wretched platforming trial. This video is not meant to be a review, and I'm not pretending to be some pro-level gamer or anything. Instead, I'm making this video as a sort of cautionary tale. While I have always had a strong fondness for Turok, playing it again kind of sullied my memories with the game. It revealed just how sloppy, simple, and repetitive the game is. Turok Dinosaur Hunter isn't some ahead-of-its-time sprawling adventure with Metroid Prime undertones. It's a quick clone with bloated levels and repetitive design. The shooting is fun, but the complete lack of anything compelling beyond that, such as a story or environmental puzzles, brings it down in a huge way. I don't mean to criticize if you happen to love Turok. Trust me, I get it. It's a classic for a reason, and I'm glad that Night Dive was able to bring it back from the N64 graveyard. But playing this has me questioning whether or not I want to boot up Turok 2 for an honest playthrough anytime soon. If you intend to try Turok for yourself, I'd recommend taking the time to find as many keys as possible early on, if only to reduce the repetitive nature of the game. Otherwise, take what I've said here as a bit of a warning. Depending on your fondness for old school shooters, you may not enjoy Turok a whole lot. Well, that was a somber end to the video. What do you guys think? Am I way off base here? Did I miss some crucial element that may have redeemed this game for me? If so, I'd love to know about it. And more importantly, I'd like to know if I should give Turok 2 a chance or just leave it be for now. Let me know in the comments, and who knows, maybe we'll find ourselves with a little bit of a Turok redemption story. Thanks for watching.